We begin tonight at the University of Toronto, where a pro-Palestinian encampment occupying the downtown campus for 2 months now has been ordered to be dismantled. Now, earlier today, a court granted the school an injunction to remove the protesters. Tyler Cheese is on our top story tonight. He's at the University of Toronto. He joins us now. So, Tyler, what can you tell us about this injunction?
Yeah, Travis. So protesters now have until 6 p.m. tomorrow to take down their tents here in the encampment. After that, according to the justice's ruling today, police have the authority to come in and arrest and remove anybody who doesn't leave. Protest organizers spoke to reporters a little earlier today about whether or not they plan to comply with that. And here's what they had to say.
We will continue until U of T ends its complicity in this genocide, and that, this encampment is one tactic of many. People have we formed this coalition, we formed these groups, and they will continue long after this. We know that this community is strong, the students are strong, the faculty are strong, and we will continue to demand divestment and fight for Palestinian liberation until Palestine is free.
So really what they're saying is they need to regroup, talk to other members of the encampment, and then they'll make their final decision on tomorrow. But they also say they'll continue to make those same demands they have since the encampment started on May 2nd. They're calling on the university to cut its ties with Israel, divest from companies profiting from Israel's strikes on Gaza, and end partnerships with the country's academic institutions.
Okay, so Tyler, is still a bit of a stalemate here, and we can see that encampment over your shoulder. What do we know about the arguments that were made during the hearings?
Yeah, so during those hearings, they happened a few weeks ago, the school's lawyers argued the protest breaches school policies, infringes on others' free speech rights, and has made members of the community feel unsafe. Meanwhile, on the other side, the protesters' lawyers argued clearing the encampment would violate their protected rights to free expression and peaceful assembly. But ultimately, for the justice, this came down to the fact that the space is school property. A lawyer for the encampment explains that.
We should not be surprised by the outcome that this court has found that private property owners can control what is done on their land. Our court system and the use of police to remove people from land is continuously used to try to defend the status quo, and that is the only principle the judge could find to rule in the university's favor today.
So it is also interesting to note that the justice ruled there wasn't enough evidence from the university to prove that hateful behavior or anti-Semitic speech was taking place at the encampment. The university has released a statement in response to the injunction decision and says it will restore King's College Circle for use by all members of its academic community. And that statement also says protesters can continue to exercise their right to free speech on campus, just as long as they don't erect any structures or stay overnight. So, Travis, we'll all be watching to see what happens tomorrow at 6.
We certainly will be. Tyler Cheese on our top story tonight at the campus, the downtown campus, that is, of the University of Toronto. Well, you heard my next guest in Tyler's report. Erin Mackey is the spokesperson for the U of T pro-Palestinian encampment. She joins me here in studio. Thanks for making the trip.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so what's the next move for the folks that are in the encampment?
Yeah, we are on day 62 of our encampment at the University of Toronto, demanding that U of T divest from weapons manufacturing and ends complicity in the ongoing genocide that's happening in Palestine. And we heard today that the judge has ordered in U of T's favor to call the police we know are violent, to come clear this encampment. And I'm truly appalled by that, to be honest. And, students will continue to fight for these demands and fight for divestment, whether or not, the campus exists in its current form. Okay.
So does that mean then, whether or not the encampment exists in its current form, does that indicate that you will be moving by tomorrow before the deadline at 6 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah, so, we have a lot of students, faculty, and staff who have been supporting the encampment since day one, and, we need to call all those folks back together.
Sure.
We got this ruling today at 4:30, and so we're sort of gathering everyone and, going to engage in conversations about what next steps are. But one of those next steps is absolutely to continue to make these demands and demand divestment until U of T ends the complicity in this genocide.
What are you advising those in the encampment to do as one of the organizers?
Yeah. So we are figuring out next steps. But again, students have been making these demands at U of T since 2006. They will continue to do so, long after this encampment until U of T divests.
Okay. So you're not saying whether or not you will fully be gone by tomorrow at 6 p.m. is essentially what I take away from that.
As we're here right now, you know, there's a community meeting happening on site at camp.
Okay. I want to read you a statement that we just got from the U of T President, Mark Artmar, part of it, because it's a lengthy letter here. Anyone who chooses to remain in the encampment after the deadline is subject to consequences under university policy and the law. And a letter has been sent to Toronto Police Service requesting assistance from the encampment if it's not cleared by 6 p.m. We have seen what's happened at other campuses. Clearly, that is something that you don't want. So, is this not a peaceful solution to this? That, you know, the university is saying that you can still protest in other forms, but not just in the center of St.
We've been really clear since day one what it would take to clear this encampment, and that's a commitment from the University of Toronto to divest and end complicity in this genocide. And so, you know, yeah, of course, we've seen police violence at other encampments, and we know, you know, the Toronto police are violent. They have been making arrests and been violent towards students. The other day at the governing council meeting, campus police were sort of pushing and shoving Palestinian students. So we know police are violent, and we're, you know, anticipating that you know, if things sort of get to that point, you know, the police are violent, and U of T is calling violent police on their own students.
We've done segments on this program before related to divestments, because, you know, when folks hear divest from, it is somewhat of a complicated, process. Are there specific companies that you want, or specific, you know, relationships that you want the University of Toronto to divest from? Have you given them a list, or are there more specifics in terms of what you want to see in terms of those divestments?
Yeah, so divestment actually at the University of Toronto has taken place before. U of T divested from South African apartheid in 1988. They divested from fossil fuels in 2021. And so, you know, we are asking for them to do the same for this ongoing genocide and divest from companies complicit in Israeli apartheid.
All of them.
So, yes, so we're asking for U of T to divest from both direct and indirect investments from weapons manufacturing. So that includes, you know, big names like Lockheed Martin and Elbit Systems and others. And so, you know, very similar demands to other students at other universities. And, you know, prior to this injunction, our lawyers put forth a settlement with U of T that, you know, said they could, you know, avoid the injunction if they committed to divestment, full stop. And unfortunately, U of T refused to do so, and they're instead calling police on their own students. I
just want to read you this. This is from the University of Toronto. In response to any claims connecting the University of Toronto in any way to Israeli military action in Gaza, a spokesperson for the University of Toronto says, quote, "Such claims have no basis in fact. There is no evidence to support such claims, including that which the protesters have cited." What do you make of that statement from the U of T?
So we know that U of T does in fact not have direct investments, as most universities do not. Instead, they have what's called indirect investments, where I take my money and I put it in a pool with other people's money, and then that pool gets invested in various assets, including weapons manufacturing. And so U of T has 44 sort of asset managers, or people who manage those different pools. And because U of T has not disclosed sort of where its investments are, students, faculty, and staff had been forced to do their own investigation and have determined that 17 of those have active investments in weapons manufacturing companies complicit in Israeli apartheid.
Do you see a scenario where protesters do leave and engage in other ways of protest at the University of Toronto's campus by tomorrow at 7 p.m.?
Yeah, I mean, so tomorrow it's a big day. We'll sort of see what happens. But again, I think fundamentally, it's appalling that U of T is calling the police that are violent on their own students for protesting a genocide. Genocide is wrong, full stop. As a student, as a person, we have the right to stand up and demand that our institutions that we're part of, that I paid tuition to for, that I'm an alumni of, is not complicit in that.
Let me just ask you personally, not as the organizer, but as you, as a protester, a single protester. Do you plan on staying past the 6 p.m. deadline tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, unfortunately, I'm one of the media spokespersons, so everything I say is, you know, a representative of the entire encampment. And what I can tell you right now is that students, faculty, and staff will continue to make these demands of U of T until U of T divests.
All right. Erin, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That is Erin Mackey, a spokesperson for the U of T pro-Palestinian encampment at the St. George downtown campus.